First of all, I welcome you all the students, respected faculties, guests, and fellow philosophers. It is my great honor to welcome you to today's event, our first club event, which is Introduction to Philosophy of our Symposium Club. As the president of the Symposium Club, I am thrilled to see so many curious minds gathered here today. Philosophy, at its core, is an inquiry into the fundamental nature of our reality, knowledge, and human existence. It is a discipline that encourages us to question, to challenge, and to seek wisdom. Throughout the history, philosophers have shaped our understanding of the world and our place within it. From the ancient Greeks to modern thinkers, philosophy has been a driving force behind human progress. Today we gather to explore the world of philosophy, to delve into the key concepts, and to discover how it can enrich our lives. Our team Symposium is thankful to Dr. Karunakaran Shaji, sir, for making this club possible and this event also. We would also like to thank the Student Council for supporting and helping out to this event. I wish you a thought-provoking and enlightening experience. So without further ado, let us welcome Dr. Karunakaran Shaji, sir, to proceed with the lecture. Dear students, Mother Sara and Pradeep sir, so I do not know why we are here this evening. We are in an irresolvable paradox, and that is the fundamental philosophical proposition. There are no answers, only questions only. So I should like to know as to what brings you here, because on the basis of your expectations, I have to proceed. We have to proceed. Because philosophy is too complex a subject to be discussed at an amateur level. Because even the people who have got the PhDs and the PGs in philosophy do not really know what philosophy is. The subject is vastly having an evasive character. So at least some of you may tell me as to what has inspired you to be here. What are your expectations at least? Even though we never promise to fulfill those expectations. It is a collective inquiry. We are all groping in the darkness. The greatest quality of philosophy is that philosophy has never provided any caustic definitive answer to any question till this time. From Socrates to the contemporary philosophers, nobody has ever solved a single problem that concerns the vast humanity. And that is embodied in this essential Rodin's thinker, one of the most iconic sculptures regarding the philosophy. On the basis of the structural themes of the sculpture, you can very well visualize as to what philosophy constitutes. All the sinews and the nerves of his body are tightened.
the brooding contemplative posture of a man who is even unable to resolve himself. And that is what the ultimate dilemma of a philosopher is. So we are basically concerned about this philosophy, this proper philosophy, because in one way philosophy is the mother of all the disciplines which we are having today. Everything began with the philosophy. There used to be a time when the classical universities had only 4 disciplines in the world, and the most important was philosophy. It was the king of all the disciplines. Only philosophy, astronomy, geometry had been the subjects in the classical universities like Wittenberg University. And even when the Oxford University came into existence in the 11th century, the only topic they added to philosophy was theology. So like most of the terms in the modern usage, philosophy too is having its origins from 2 Greek terms. We can properly say the philosophy properly originated with the Greeks, with Plato. Even though Socrates is the master of Plato, philosophy properly begins with Plato. Socrates never devised any consistent system of philosophy. Other than the Socratic dialogues which are available to us even today. Philos and Sophia. The love of wisdom, that is what philosophy is. The quest after the ultimate truth concerning the existence. Because if we ask the question as to who we are, there are no answers to that question. It was the same question which Buddha, Mahavira, Christ. Christ never asked this question because Christ had a definitive answer. So in the exact sense of the term, Christ cannot be considered as a philosopher. Even though philosophy is there in the teachings of Christ. And that is why even Indian philosophy as such cannot be termed as philosophy in its proper sense. Because Indian philosophy is ultimately the darshanas. The light that is revealed to the seeker at a certain point of time in this mystic inquiry. There is a huge world of difference between a darshana and philosophy. Because darshana is a full-fledged, it's not a full-fledged discipline, whereas philosophy is. Philosophy should be having a pattern. It should be having the reason and logic acting behind it. It has to be almost as precise as a mathematical equation. But when it comes to, we come to the darshanas is not bound by any one of these concepts. Because darshana, it is available only to a single individual at a point of time. And he begins to reveal it to the world as if this is the ultimate truth. And nobody can ever verify or challenge it. It can be challenged. And that is one of the beauties of the Indian philosophy. Indian darshanas. They permitted the oppositions, contradictions. Even the disciples of the master could challenge the master if they have no conviction in the teachings of the masters. That is why somewhere in philosophy the genuine disciple is the one who defies his master. The disciple who doesn't prove that his master is wrong is not a real disciple. So philosophy begins with the fundamental question, as to who am I? Where do I belong to? And where am I going hereafter? If at all I am going anywhere. That question is still not decided. That is perhaps the most beautiful aspect of philosophy. No arbitrary answers are possible in philosophy. Next. This is Plato. First we will go through the slides in just 5 minutes and then we will be having a discussion. I don't want to talk to you for a long time because as the aspirants of the philosophical knowledge, it is you who have to raise the questions and find your own answers. I don't have any answers for questions. This is Plato, perhaps the man with whom philosophy begins properly. That is why somebody has famously remarked that the entire modern philosophy is nothing but a series of footnotes to Plato. Because even today nobody had gone a line beyond what Plato had said. They are all interpretations, additions, or various kinds of analysis of what Plato had said. Even in postmodernism, there are themes of Plato involved. So that is the depth and application, the intensity of the Platonian philosophy. This is the first and foremost disciple of Plato, Aristotle. But there is an internal divergence between Plato and Aristotle. They disagreed on most of the points concerning philosophy. Because when Plato believed in the world of pure ideas, almost like the Indian concept of the Brahma, Platonian ideas are almost coming to the point of the Indian darshanas, especially the darshanas like Advaita Darshana, where the ultimate reality is the Brahman, and whatever you see here on this earth are imitations or only Maya. We began to believe that what we find on this earth are having a reality of their own. And perhaps the most famous word which Aristotle is using is the word mimesis, the representation of the reality. But the greatest problem in understanding both Plato and Aristotle is that they wrote the classical Greek language, most of which are not at all translatable. And whatever philosophy which are available about Plato and Aristotle, they mainly came to us through the Arabic translations, and not a direct translation from Greek to English. So when it becomes a translation of a translation, the original meanings will be lopsided, it will be missed, and it will be misinterpreted. And this is a fundamental problem in understanding the philosophy of Plato and Aristotle. We do not know as to what are the exact meanings in which Plato and Aristotle used these terms. This is perhaps the most famous painting that belongs to the Italian Renaissance age, a painting by Raphael, known as the School of Athens. It is considered as the masterpiece of Raphael, where almost all the Greek philosophers, geometricians, astronomers, theoreticians, all of them are gathered together. Even the Stoic philosophers are there. If you look at the center of the painting, there you can find Plato raising his finger like this. Plato and Aristotle are having an argument. Plato raising his finger upwards, pointing that the ultimate reality is there above and beyond these mundane realities. Whereas Aristotle, who is holding one of his books, is pointing his hand downwards. That is in the material world of the reality. And that is where we begin to suspect that even Marxism is having its origins in Aristotle. The Charvaka philosophy is having its origins in Aristotle. So most of the contemporary philosophers are having their roots either in Plato or in Aristotle. And you can find also the image of Euclid in the painting. Euclid explaining geometry to his students. And there are the Stoic philosophers who does not believe in the philosophy taught by the Greek masters of those times. So almost every luminary of the Greek philosophy, the Greek metaphysics is represented in the finest classic painting of the Italian Renaissance. So this painting is almost considered to be the textbook of philosophy and the metaphysical knowledge of the classical ages. Now we began the talk by saying that philosophy is the mother of all the subjects. So basically philosophy is having three roots. One is the ontological roots, second is the etymological, the epistemological roots, and the third is the metaphysical dimensions. But gradually, in course of time, they began to develop in three different ways. Ever since the Newtonian physics began to appear, physics began to take a different path from philosophy. The reason and the logic was taken out by physics. So the development of the evolution of the Newtonian physics, philosophy began to lose half of its glamour, its shape. Whatever philosophy had been holding as its essential property was taken away by physics to a great extent. And the second major rift in philosophy happened ever since the theory of evolution was introduced by Charles Darwin. Perhaps the greatest earth-shaking discovery ever made in the history of humanity. Because it began to challenge the very edifices of the religious philosophy of those times. That means only in very recent times, the Vatican would accept the theory of evolution. Even today, they are having some certain problems in approving or accepting the theory in its totality. And ultimately, mathematics began to move on in its own path, and philosophy was reduced to a minuscule of what it used to be in the past. So what had originally been possessed by philosophy was taken over by biology, physics, and mathematics. And with the appearance of theology, especially the arrival of the Semitic religions, philosophy had been dealt out the last blow. Because pagan religions had never any problem with philosophy. Paganism was highly accommodating. But the Semitic religions had certain problems with philosophy. That is at the beginning of a Dr. Christopher Marlowe's play. He says that my soul will be with the dead philosophers in the hell after my death. As per Christianity, the philosopher's soul will essentially be going to the hell. There is an exclusive place reserved for the philosophers in the hell. Because the moment the philosophy is accepting the existence of a God, the whole inquiry of philosophy will come to an end. That is what the Semitic religions could never tolerate. So the rift between Semitic religions and the gradual ascension of the Semitic religions, especially the Judaic-Christian traditions, the conversion made by Emperor Constantine in the first synod that was held in the 4th century. That was almost a devastating moment for the philosophy. And philosophy never met with the religion again. But there have been occasional meeting places between religion and philosophy. This is the picture of Saint Francis of Assisi. Perhaps the intellectual power center of Christianity. There are only two intellectual centers in Christianity. One is Saint Assisi and the second is Saint Francis. So Saint Francis tried to bring about the camaraderie between philosophy and Christianity, but not to the expected levels of success. The problem with the theology is that it will not be yielding to the temptations of logic and honesty. It will always offer a stiff resistance to all attempts to make a critical analysis or a critical introspection of what their convictions are. These are the 6 schools of Indian philosophy, known as the Shaddarsanas. The 6 schools of Indian philosophy, along with the 2 heterodox systems, that is the 3 heterodox systems. One is Buddhism, second is Jainism, and the third is Charvakas. Charvaka philosophy. We do not have any written accounts of the Charvaka philosophy, because it is believed that the entire philosophical text of Charvaka school was destroyed by the rival schools of philosophy. Whatever we know about Charvakas, we become aware of that only through the writings of the rival schools. So this is the most powerful heterodox philosophy in India, the India's greatest gift to the humanity, perhaps, Buddhism. Buddha was an absolute materialist, but at the same time, there are problems in the Buddhist philosophy as well. For example, the dialectical, the dependent origination of Buddha, which comes very close to the dialectical materialism of Marx, has not been properly interpreted or explained by the later Buddhist scholars. And Buddha is not providing any conclusive answers to some of the most critical questions in philosophy. And the same thing happened with Mahavira also. But the problem with both Buddha and Mahavira is that they had some difficulties in stating properly as to what is the soul. In spite of being heterodox systems, they could not entirely be materialists. They still believed that there is the man is having a soul. Except perhaps the Charvakas. You will have next slide. Charvaka is the most dynamic, the most ebullient materialistic philosophy ever presented to the humanity, perhaps. And as per the accounts, even from the Mahabharata times, the Charvakas were there. And in Mahabharata, there are accounts of a Charvaka being burnt alive, even. So that means the Indian philosophical schools were not always tolerant to the opponents, in spite of the much professed camaraderie that had been existing amongst the different schools of philosophy. That is, Christ had said nothing. But even then, the culture of the land in which Christ lived could not tolerate the philosophy of Christ, and that is why he was crucified. But in India, there had been the culture of understanding, trying to understand the arguments of the rival schools and accommodating it. But however, even the relatively tolerant Indians could not accommodate the Charvaka philosophy. That is why the entire Charvaka texts were burnt, or it is nearly lost to the posterity in course of time. Next. So only when we read the Charvaka philosophy, we understand the extent to which the ancient Indian consciousness could travel to. This is because the ideas of the Charvakas, even today, most of the sections of the humanity could not tolerate. And this happening more than nearly 3,000 years ago in India, we can visualize the extent to which the human consciousness had expanded in the Indian scenario. Because whatever Charvakas advocated, the absolute materialism of the Charvaka, the idea that there is neither a God nor a life hereafter, all your story comes to an end with your deaths. This is something entirely unacceptable even today, even in the 21st century, even when the science and technology has advanced so much. Even when our own Indian constitution is advocating the scientific temper. If you go to the Indian constitution, in the preliminary of the constitution, in the preamble of the constitution, there is a beautiful word incorporated. We will try to promote the scientific temper. There is a huge difference between scientific knowledge and scientific temper. For example, if you are having the knowledge of sending a rocket, you can successfully execute a Chandrayaan plan. But if you visit, if you pay your ritual offerings at the Tirupati temple before launching this Chandrayaan, that means you do not have the scientific temper. Because your knowledge, the hardware of your knowledge is in the 21st century, but then the software of your superstition belongs to the prehistoric times. Unfortunately, we keep on promoting the lack of scientific temper and consider it as a virtue. So that is where we have to validate the significance of the Charvakas. In fact, their philosophy was far more radical than the philosophy of Buddha or Jaina or Mahavira. So these philosophies we are not all going to discuss in detail, because we will not understand anything. Immanuel Kant. Next. Spinoza. Another. Next slide. Descartes. Descartes is perhaps one of the most powerful philosophers of modern times, who created the idea that cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. But that is not at all as simple as you believe it to be. That is, the world exists as a result of your subjective consciousness. Beyond your subjective consciousness, there is no objective reality for anything. That is the meaning of cogito ergo sum. So, as we said, in modern times, philosophy has been divided into three. One is the socio-economic philosophy, and it is to this area that Bertrand Russell belongs. And the next is the psychological philosophy, the philosophy of psychology, the human psychology, inaugurated by Sigmund Freud and Carl Gustav Jung. And the third is the political philosophy. There are any number of political philosophy, from Marxism, Leninism, communism, all those ideas, even fascism is a political philosophy. And the last is the metaphysical philosophy, to which existentialism, absurdism, and all those questions. This is Nietzsche, a man whose philosophy was widely misused by the Nazis and fascists, because he believed in the will to power and the concept of the Superman. And after reading the philosophy of Nietzsche, Hitler believed that he is the Superman mentioned in Nietzsche's philosophy, but that Nietzsche never implied it. So Nietzsche is one of the most widely misinterpreted, misjudged philosophers, but an intellectual giant of 20th century. The man who became famous as the author of the Antichrist. Next. And Hegel's philosophy inspired Karl Marx later. Marxism, Karl Marx and his Marxism, it belongs to the political philosophy. In spite of the drawbacks of Marxism, Marxism is an all-comprehensive philosophy, dealing with all the different dimensions of life, including its social, economic, political, and even psychological and ethical dimensions. Next. This is not a philosopher but a scientist, Stephen Hawking. Before he died, Stephen Hawking made a very controversial statement about philosophy. With that slide we are concluding it, because that corroborates with what where Plato and Aristotle had begun. Stephen Hawking said, since science is now full-fledged, now scientific researches are reaching its peak, philosophy has lost its traditional seats of prowess, and philosophy has to be treated as a dead subject. Philosophy is no longer relevant, because the original purpose of philosophy was to seek the ultimate knowledge beyond the last crystal reaches of the sunlight. That is what philosophy is targeting. So since science has taken the reins of knowledge, philosophy has failed into insignificance. This is a debatable claim made by Stephen Hawking. So now it is your turn. I will no longer talk to you.
Is it fine if I ask something?
Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
What is your opinion on Diogenes? Diogenes.
Diogenes. Stoicism.
Cynicism.
You see, every philosophy is the product of a certain age. The prevailing currents of those times. And we have to validate or invalidate it historically. For example, if the people who lived 2000 years or 5000 years ago believed in astrology, they cannot be blamed for that, because the man's awareness concerning the universe had been so limited. Now even a DMS school child knows much better than Isaac Newton. He knows it, but that doesn't mean his knowledge is superior. If Isaac Newton had been living in the modern times, he would have known much better than the DMS school child. So every philosophy has to be treated as a product of the socio-economic, political realities of those times. Even Buddha is the creation of a political necessity of those times. Buddha found that there is a vast scale exploitation going on. And so his foremost idea was to challenge the supremacy of the Vedas. Because a group of people had been exploiting the others in the name of the authority of the Vedas. So likewise, every school of philosophy has to treat it. That's it. Any one of you can come over here and talk to the audience. It is not audience, we are all discussing. Sir?
Many of the discussions. No, I just came here to listen.
Sir, I have sir, in that slide where we were looking at Buddha. Sir, first question is, how do we account for the fact that Buddha turned into a god from a human being? That is one of the questions I have. The
Yes,
other,
that is a good question. The fact is that Buddha never founded a religion. Buddha was not a Buddhist. And Christ was not a Christian. Buddhism is entirely the creation of Emperor Ashoka, the way Christianity was the creation. By Constantine. If even today no historian would ever provide a clear explanation as to why Emperor Constantine on one fine morning decided to make Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire, and that changed the whole history for Christianity. If Constantine had not done that, Christianity would have remained only a cult religion even today. For example, in Kerala, in certain churches there are the image of a cross with two doves flying down, and this is not the Christ of, not the cross of Christianity. It is coming from another sect of Christianity, another subsect of Christianity, not Christianity exactly, a cult religion known as the Manicans. And Manicans might have come to Kerala even before the arrival of Christians in Kerala, even before the conversion of people into Christianity. That is why even the name Mani is there in among us the Christians in Kerala. This is the reason. So Christianity might have remained only a minority religion if, without the intervention of Constantine. And second thing, as to why Buddha was made a god. The reasons are somewhat to psychology. Because mankind is always looking for a god who will provide him a tablet when he is having a headache. They are looking for the easy solutions. And in the absence of a god, they made Buddha himself into a god. This is something Buddha never expected or wanted his people to. And this has happened with every religion. And in Rigveda, there is an announcement made by one of the sages that now we are going to discuss some of the very sensitive issues. So the pregnant women have to stay out of this hall. That means even the pregnant women used to attend the Indian philosophic symposiums. They may not be famous, might not have become famous as Gargi or Maitreyi. But that doesn't mean women were not there. But generally, there had been, in times of the patriarchal norms, women never got the privileges they were capable of. That might have happened. Any other question? Do you want to ask anything, Gargi? No, not Gargi, Vanka. And let us conclude it by saying that even though there is a term religious philosophy, the question has often been raised as to whether the philosophy of a religion can ever be labeled as philosophy in its real sense. Because theology and philosophy are always different. Because when you are moving along the theological lines, already you are acknowledging your bonds with certain ideas, certain ideas. You are not free. And that happens with the political ideologies also. So long as I do not have independence, the intellectual independence, I will not be able to validate the political or a religious philosophy in its authentic sense. For example, if I am a hardcore communist, I will never be able to accept or acknowledge the fact that in certain areas, communism comes close to the religious ideology itself. That is true. And communism is having fascist leanings also. There is only a thin line of difference between communism and fascism in certain areas. Because when fascism believes in the power being concentrated in a few number of people, Marxism, on the other hand, believes in the power of the proletariat. Only they are sharing the power during that time, during the communist utopia. That is why during the presentation of the Indian constitution, Ambedkar has very clearly mentioned that there are 2-3 sections of the people who will never be acknowledging this constitution. One is the religious people. They will not like it because this is a sovereign secular constitution. And the reference to secularism is something which the religious fundamentalists will never be accepted. And second thing, communists will be having difficulty in accepting this constitution because it is not acknowledging, not empowering the grabbing of the property possessed by the individuals. So this problem is there whenever we talk about a political philosophy or a religious philosophy. That is always truncated examples of the philosophical outlook. That's it. Anything else? So thank you for one more ultimate request to you, to all of you. You always keep the spirit of philosophy alive. Make philosophy a part of your life. Because here somebody, as you said it, philosophy will never provide you happiness. I totally disagree with that. There is nothing in the world which will make you as happy as philosophy. Perhaps happiness is guaranteed by philosophy. Because in spite of all problems, you will never come across an unhappy philosopher. Because he will never relate himself to the real problems in the world. Thereby he can be happy. Socrates, for example, had so many family problems. But Socrates never cared about them. He asked his wife to go to hell. And thereby he became happy. There is the ultimate version of the happiness in philosophy, in a philosophical school, that is the Epicurean philosophy. Epicureanism. Even though Epicureanism is not accepted in modern times. As we said about Charvakas come close to Epicureanism, but Charvakas are not entirely Epicureanism. Because when Epicureanism is asking you to borrow money and to drink wine, the Charvakas are asking you to borrow money and to drink butter. That is the difference. Wine is replaced with the butter by Charvakas. So Charvakas were more health conscious. They knew that alcohol is injurious to health. And one thing more, one last note. When we casually mentioned about alcohol. In fact, philosophy is having a close connection with alcohol. The finest example is the Symposiums of Aristotle and Plato. The name of our club is Symposium, isn't it? In Symposium, the people of Athens, the philosophers and ordinary people used to recline on the sofas of the drawing room of the host, and there will be slave girls who will be passing around the wine cups. Usually they used to drink from the same wine cup. The wine cups used to be flat during those times. And it is from that convention that the modern idea of the symposium originated. So the Greek wine has made two profound contributions to the human culture. One is the Greek theatre, the second is the Greek philosophy. Both are having their origin in the Greek wine. So never underestimate the wine. Give the wine its due place. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the precious words and time. So, as we come to the close of today's event, Introduction to Philosophy, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for being part of this incredible event. Today, we explore the vast expanse of philosophical thought from the ancient to modern and from the abstract to the practical. We questioned and sought wisdom together. I would like to extend my special thanks to our beloved faculty, Dr. Karunakaran Shaji sir, for sharing his insights and expertise with us. Your contributions have enriched our understanding and sparked new ideas in us, sir.
Thank you.
I also thank Dr. Madhu sir, Dr. Praveen Kumar sir, Assistant Professor Naveen sir, and Assistant Professor Suhas sir for gracing their auspicious presence on the first event of our club. To our organizers and supporters, your tireless efforts have made this event a resounding success. Thank you for your dedication and hard work. And to our audience, thank you for your engagement, your curiosity, and your passion for philosophy. As we depart, I would like you to leave with a quote from the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates. The unassignment life is not worth living. May the ideas and inspirations from today's event stay with you, guiding you to examine, to question, and to seek wisdom in all aspects of your life. Thank you all for coming. Thank you once again. Your refreshments are waiting. Please go and have it.